What's up, nerds? It's your boy, the OGGM, coming to you live at 10 o'clock in the morning on what is looking to be a foggy, rainy spring day here. It's Site B. It's the 13th day of March, 2023. It's about 10 o'clock. It's raining. It's time to take a look at the Monday morning tabletop role-playing game news. Time to set our compass for what the topics of controversy will be this week in the world of tabletop role-playing. And sadly, most of it is dominated by Wizards of the Coast / Dungeons and Dragons, which is interesting because all the number one top sellers on Kickstarter right now are 5e adjacent dark games. So despite Wizards of the Coast continuing to prop up that people, this is the game you want, the Vox populace is speaking out and going, no, we want Shadow Dark. No, we want Grim Hollow. No, we do not want the game you are peddling. Now, this is another interesting thing because the previews for the upcoming D&D movie are now being out there. The press junket has started. They are sending out the various stars to wine and dine. My favorite, Chris Pine was forced to cut his hair, shave, and dress up for the movie premieres. His press agent and the studio insisted that before Chris Pine go to the very first thing for the very first movie, Glad Handing, for the press, he had to cut his hair, shave, and dress like a normal human being, as opposed to the whatever it was he was trying to look like at San Diego Comic Book Con. I guess the dude from Big Lebowski. So yeah. And the very first review for D&D, the movie, says Chris Pine can save any movie he's in. Chris Pine can save any movie he's in. All right, well, let's look at Chris Pine's portfolio. Wonder Woman 84. Star Trek. Other Star Trek. Other Star Trek. A few other things. Every one of those films are media darlings. Yes, he was in Wonder Woman, the original one, playing Steve Trevor, and that did extremely well. But that was pretty much because of Gal Gadot, not him. He was the damsel in distress in that movie to Gal's Wonder Woman. So, yeah, Chris Pine, who was forced to shave, can save any movie he's in. It's amazing because all the preview reports are all people saying, 100% love this movie. Perfect bubblegum popcorn summer movie. It's everything you expect a D&D movie to be like if you've never actually played D&D and know nothing about the hobby. It's a great introduction to the hobby if you don't know anything about the hobby and you've never played D&D. 100%. Every review this weekend, 100%. Love this movie. And yet Hasbro stock is down almost $6 over the weekend. It has dropped consistently. It dropped Friday, it dropped Saturday, and it dropped Sunday. It is unheard of for a stock to drop on Sunday because the market's not open on Sunday. And yet somehow Hasbro stock managed to drop $2 on Sunday. And today it dropped another $1. So between Friday and today, Hasbro stock is down a record $6, but the movie's doing well. And all the news is about Wizards of the Coast, even though games like Shadow Dark and this are the number ones on Kickstarter. So first off, if you didn't know, they put the stat block for the characters from the movie on D&D Beyond, but they are not the characters. They are NPC monsters. And the stat block that they presented makes no absolute sense. Also, apparently, she's not green anymore, and she's not a half-orc. Except, of course, if you go look at the original trailer from SDCC, strangely missing, she was green. But I guess they went in post and made her look less green and more of approachable. And now she's just a tough girl with tattoos who maybe is a barbarian. I don't know. All of them have hit point stats over $100, 100 hit points. Every one of them has multi-attack. And they are all medium humanoids, because D8 medium humanoids, because I guess that's Wizards of the Coast's final way of resolving the whole race, species, ancestry thing. Then we have the community updates, and the update the upcoming secret meeting where Wizards of the Coast is inviting a whole bunch of pro Wizards of the Coast YouTubers to come out and talk to them in Seattle on their dime. Yeah, right. We all know how that works. You send them the receipts, and eventually they might pay you back in anywhere between 40 and 80 days. Yeah. I worked on enough movie sets where I had to confirm that, oh, yeah, you're going to get paid eventually. So, yeah. And, of course, I wasn't invited, but Bob Worldbuilder was. Pretty sure J. Scott Garrity wasn't invited. I don't know. Anybody still follow him? But Jeannie D was. So I guess they're not looking at people who are going to be too critical of them. As of today, they have collected feedback for the 3 surveys, for the 3 things they released. They haven't done the 4th one yet. They added the SRD to Creative Commons. Of course, the SRD that they added to Creative Commons was the wrong SRD. But whatever, in progress. They're going to finally convert the SRD and all the surveys into other languages, because in the company that's been inclusive and diversified since 2014 has somehow forgotten that people in other languages play their games. And none of the surveys have been in any language except English. They're going to scrub all the previous editions and all the previous edition stuff and bring it up to the current Creative Commons, but of course it'll be the socially acceptable stuff. They are publishing an internal content policy for D&D products, even though they claim we're not going to do that. We're not going to judge you. We're not going to police D&D, but we are making this internal content policy for D&D products. And then there'll be more stuff coming down the pipe. Hey, you want to get a free trial to D&D Beyond? Now you can. You can get 1 month free, cancel anytime. This is a desperate attempt on them to reclaim the several thousand subscriptions that they lost in January and February. Desperate to get people back on D&D Beyond because they are taking Dungeons and Dragons digital. And the gateway to the digital D&D world will be D&D Beyond. And D&D Beyond has suffered a horrible loss because of January and February. We have the nominees for this year's Nebula for Best Game Writing, and strangely, Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel is nominated, even though it wasn't written by one person, and it is only one of 2 actual role-playing games on the list. Everything else is computer games. Will this win? I guess to be politically correct, it's kind of got to win, as much as we don't want it to win, because the writing in Journey Through the Radiant Citadel was abysmal. Journey Through the Radiant Citadel sales was abysmal, but this is another token inclusion thing. If it doesn't win, because it had so many POCs that worked on it, and so many people, of different race, creed, color, religion, that if it doesn't win, they'll be called racist. So unfortunately, even though it's not the best nominee, it's going to win because tokenism. And if we don't, any respect that we had for the Nebula Awards, let's just remember that Thirsty Sword Lesbians won last year. Monty Cook Games has announced he's making another game called the Magnus Archive. It's a horror fiction anthology that's going to include a podcast. So, yeah, it's a role-playing game, podcast, horror fiction anthology. I've lost track to how many things Monty Cook has in the pot right now. My running complaint about Monty Cook is he makes great stuff. He comes out of the gate with great stuff. I think his Invisible Sons was like the first multi-million-dollar Kickstarter ever, right? But then he doesn't follow through. So instead of following through with stuff he's already got in the pot, he's making yet another new game and a horror fiction anthology podcast based upon this game. Games Workshop has announced a new recycling program for Warhammer and Warhammer 40K product miniatures. So Game Workshop stars will now have a bin specifically for your plastic pots and pieces and doodads and whatever. So while you're building your armor in the shop, you can just recycle. I don't think they're meaning that they're going to recycle old armies because that army isn't legal anymore. And so I think they're recycling parts and bits and all the plastic that gets left behind. Of course, it's only in the store. So since 80% of these people are putting these things together at home, are we expecting them to bring the gigantic cardboard box filled with the plastic spruces and the bits and bobs to the Games Workshop show? Or is it more likely they're going to do what people always do and just dump it in the bin? Ben Riggs is the latest to be interviewed and have interviewed our boy, Kyle Brinks. That interview can be found linked down below. And in the interview, Kyle Brinks once again says that the OGL 1.1, the thing that started the whole thing in January, the thing they still haven't technically apologized for, the thing they still haven't technically explained yet, and the thing they still haven't said the one thing everybody wants to hear them say regarding the OGL 1.1 and how the OGL 1.1 happened and how the leak happened and why it took them so long to get ahead of it and all the other questions we have asked that Kyle has sort of avoided answering. Again, Kyle gets on top of his the same hill that Kyle has been standing on since interview number 2 and since day 1, which is it was to protect us. OGL 1.1 was about power over large companies because so many companies are now doing digital and so many companies are doing the same thing that Wizards of the Coast was doing with D&D that they were afraid meta companies like Disney or Meta or Amazon would be competition for them, would take the OGL and use it to create hateful, harmful, and inappropriate content, and that somehow would be come back to Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. And they wanted to make sure that the only people that could use the copyrighted material was Wizards of the Coast. The only people that could make D&D stuff was Wizards of the Coast. And they didn't want to let they were keeping us safe. Remember, OGL 1.1 and all the horrible things it said was all about keeping us safe from Disney and Meta and Amazon. Now, on paper, perfectly fine. Yes. In this day and age of cyber piracy and data mining and everybody and their dog having access to the virtual space and the metaverse, of course you want to protect your copyrighted characters. You don't want anybody making NTFs of your copyrighted characters except you. And you don't want anybody else being able to use your copyrighted characters except for you or the people you give permission to use your copyrighted characters, because that's how copyright works in the United States. So on paper, wanting to protect your IP, total sense. Everything else about the OGL, of course, 1.1 release, of course, went against that statement. But Kyle wants to stand on his hill and fly his flag of keeping us safe. Except, you knew there had to be an except in somewhere. There's somewhere, right? Except Kyle specifically references Disney as one of the companies they were trying to protect us from. Because apparently in the mixed up thinking of Wizards of the Coast's mind, Disney is competition to Dungeons and Dragons. I guess they forgot that they already have a partnership with Disney, a long-standing partnership that goes all the way back to, a certain franchise that Disney owns half of, the Dungeons and Dragons Saturday morning cartoon from the 80s. Disney owns half of that copyright. And I guess they forgot that Hasbro makes a ton of Disney toys. And, and I guess they also forgot that Disney has their own game company. They have multiple game companies. They have multiple game companies that make D&D, make Disney video games and Disney board games, Disney card games, anything that you can put Mickey or a princess on. There is somebody out there, including Hasbro, that makes their stuff. And Disney already owns an IP that they could make into a role-playing game. I'm pretty sure you've heard of it. It's called Kingdom Hearts, as well as several others. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but Disney owns Star Wars. Disney owns the MCU. Disney owns Pirates of the Caribbean. Disney owns Indiana Jones. Disney owns all the Pixar shit. Now, if there isn't already a Kingdom Hearts role-playing game in Japan, and there might be, I'm pretty sure if Disney wanted to go into the tabletop role-playing game market, they wouldn't go after D&D. They would go after an IP they already have. We would see a princess-themed role-playing game or a Kingdom Hearts-themed role-playing game. Or they just go, well, we already own Star Wars. There's already a Star Wars role-playing game. Why do we need to make a game? We already own Marvel. There's hundreds of Marvel role-playing games. Why do we need to make one? A new one? Oh, wait, we already are. We're making the Marvel Multiverse game. So, yeah, listing Disney as a threat? No. Listing Amazon. Oh, we want to protect you from Amazon releasing harmful content. No, pretty sure you wanted to make sure that Critical Role didn't jump to Amazon, and they did. And again, Amazon has their own publishing company, has their own IPs. I don't know if you've heard of any of the IPs that Amazon owns. You might have heard of one or two of them that are vaguely known. I don't know, little known fantasy fiction titles, Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. Don't know if you knew that. Wizards of the Coast. Don't know if you knew that Amazon owns Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and Star Trek. Oh, wait, there already is a Game of Thrones role-playing game. There already is a Lord of the Rings role-playing game. There already is a Star Trek role-playing game that Amazon, in their weird way, owns. So, again, how is Amazon competition, Wizards of the Coast? Did you forget that they distribute all your product? Did you forget that Hasbro and Amazon already have a partnership? Did you somehow forget that Hasbro already has their own publishing company? And if they're going to make a role-playing game based upon an AP, they'd probably make it on one that they already own. Oh, wait, most of their IPs already have role-playing games. And third, he listed Meta. Meta, we are concerned that Meta might come after us and make harmful and inappropriate content or use our copyrights. Again, no, because Meta has their own. And if Meta were to make their own role-playing game, they wouldn't need to use you. So basically, this is all about Celesta. Celesta, the number one selling role-playing game on computers from like a year ago, uses the OGL, uses 5e. So basically, this is all about we don't want Celesta to make any more money because none of the other things Kyle's lists are competition to Hasbro. Disney, not a competitor. Plus, Hasbro has a partnership with Disney going back to the 80s. Don't know how Kyle forgot that. Amazon, not a competition. They already own their own IPs and role-playing games. Also, have a long-standing contract with Hasbro to release D&D product first on Amazon. I guess Kyle forgot that. And Meta. Again, nope, sorry, we are completely in a completely different ballpark. We don't have anything to do with D&D, and we wouldn't use copyrighted characters because we're smart enough to know that if we did, you'd sue us because I guess Kyle forgot that at the time Wizards of the Coast still owned the copyright to all the characters like Vecna and Beholder and Zastam. You know, all those characters that are in the new SRD 5.1's Creative Commons that Kyle says are copyrighted characters that they want to make sure nobody uses inappropriately. Except they're in the SRD 5.1 Creative Commons, Kyle. So doesn't that mean now I could use those characters inappropriately because you put them in the SRD? Or because you want to protect us from inappropriate, hateful use and protect us from companies like Disney using the 5.1 rule set to make stuff? Did you not mean to put Beholder and Vecna and Waterdeep in the Creative Commons? Are you going to make them go away under this new, what are we calling it? The new internal content policy? Oh, the internal content policy that we're using to protect our copyrighted characters says our copyrighted characters are in the SRD that we put into Creative Commons, but we don't want to because we want to protect our content. So we're going to have to go back into the SRD 5.1 that's in Creative Commons and scrub them out. No, I'm sure Kyle just forgot that Hasbro already has a long-standing partnership with Disney. And that somehow Kyle forgot that Disney already owns IPs and Disney already has a role-playing game coming out called Marvel Multiverse. Yeah, and of course the long-standing Star Wars role-playing games and Indiana Jones and Kingdom Hearts and all the other titles that Disney owns. Pirates of the Caribbean. I understand, Kyle, you're busy. You're under a lot of stress. I can understand how you could have forgotten that. Thank you, Kyle, for keeping us safe from the hateful content that is Disney. On that sarcastic note, that's it for today. If you like what you hear, let me know. If you think I'm wrong, let me know. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Help me reach 1,300 subs by the end of the month. If you're feeling generous, maybe head on over to Big Geek Emporium and buy my merch. Talking to you, Cat Monroe. I see you. You bought my merch. Till next time, have a great day. Stay safe. And I'll talk to you later. See ya.